How's it going today, guys? So in this video, I'm going to be doing an overview of how I fixed a front suspension clunking noise on my 2017 GMC Sierra. After reading forums and consulting people who have had the same issue, I'm 99% sure that it's the front strut top nut. This is the nut that goes on the shaft of the shock itself. And the reason for that is because 2 years ago when I first bought this truck, I installed a full set of 4 Bilstein 5100 shocks. This is a common upgrade for these trucks because the factory Ranchos are just not that good. These Bilsteins make the ride much stiffer and much more truck-like. And when you install them, there's the 3 nuts at the top that hold the strut itself into the truck frame. And then there's also the 1 center nut, which holds the strut assembly itself together. And what I didn't know is that you're supposed to reuse the OEM nut. That's because of the shape of the nut itself. It's physically bigger and it squishes that stack of parts tighter. The Bilstein nut is shallower and it doesn't do that, so you'll get this clunking noise because there's play when the shock shaft goes up and down. Now, I'm going to show you these nuts a side-by-side in a minute, but let's take a look under the hood while driving around and see if we can see any play in that top nut while hitting some bumps. So I think we can see from that clip that there was some play up and down on that shock shaft, but it's not super obvious that that was the issue. So you can see on the end of the strut, that center nut, that's the Bilstein nut. That's not the OEM GM nut. So let's take that off and let's compare it to the GM nut so we can see the difference in the shape and see why it makes this clunking noise. So something to consider when you're taking this nut off, it's not like you're putting together a strut on the ground outside of the truck. It's okay to take this nut off because the entire weight of the truck is compressing that spring, and this really has nowhere to go. So this is a 15mm nut, and then as it gets looser, I will have to hold that shock shaft still. See how the shock shaft itself is turning? So let's just get a wrench on there. And then we can hold that still at the same time. This is the OEM Bilstein nut, and you can see that the threads go all the way down to the bottom. This is the OEM GM nut that's correct for my truck. Here's the part number. I'll have it linked in the description. And the important difference here is on the bottom side. We can see that the threads don't go all the way to the bottom. And this is important because when you install these, you keep going all the way until the threads bottom out and you can't tighten it anymore. On the OEM nut, you'll get all that extra pushing down when the threads are bottomed out. When this one bottoms out, that's it, you don't get any more. And we can see that by comparing the heights of them. With the OEM nut, you probably get another ½ inch of compression when it's completely bottomed out. And then on the right here, I have another OEM nut that I've seen people recommend the part number for. Here's the part number. This one is correct for the 2019 and up trucks. And compared to the one for my truck, they're almost identical. The only difference is the width of this built-in washer on the bottom. But since I have it, I'm just going to use the one that's meant for my truck. So let's get this installed and see if it makes a difference. All right, so we got both nuts installed. Here's the driver's side. You can see it's the new OEM nut. I did the same on the passenger side. Now, let's go for a ride and let's see if it made a difference. All right, so I'm not sure if you could hear that, but it's still making the clunking noise a little bit. It's a new day, I did some research, and what I found is that apparently the shafts on these Bilstein shocks, the threads don't extend down far enough. So no matter which nuts you use, it's still gonna have a little bit of play and make this clunking noise. So there's a couple things you can do. I bought these washers, and I'm gonna put these in between the top of the strut and the nut, and that'll hopefully take up some of that play. And then we're also gonna do this by driving the truck up onto the highest curb that I can find to try and compress that front suspension. And hopefully that will allow us to tighten it down as much as possible. So let's pull it up on a curb and see what we can do. And just for a reference, this is to show you how much threads we have exposed with the OEM nut, but before adding the extra washer. All right, so I just took it for a ride, and I'm pretty sure that did it. I can't hear the clunking anymore. And just to give you a perspective, that's how many threads are left. About half as many as there were before. But all the threads are still on there, which means the nut still has all of its strength. And if that's what it takes to not get this nut to bottom out on those Bilstein threads, then that's what it takes, and you gotta add a washer. But it really sounds like that clunking's gone. So let's do the other side and see how that turns out. All right, so I got the nut and washer installed on the passenger side, and then I took it for a drive, and I can confidently say that the clunking is now 100% gone. Then I looked underneath the hood, and I saw that both of the nuts were installed the exact same amount. I have about one thread showing above the nut on both sides. So if you guys have this Bilstein shock upgrade, I highly suggest looking underneath the hood and making sure you use the OEM nuts. If not, I'd swap them out, and then I'd also see if you get any clunking, and then maybe you're gonna have to use a washer like I had to. If you guys like this type of content, check out these other two videos. In my most recent one, I made a rear window screen for my truck because I like to go camping in the rear seat, and now I can open up the sliding window and get some airflow in there. And then in this other one, I installed an underhood storage box that came out of a 90s Suburban underneath the hood of my truck. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you liked it, please subscribe. It really helps me out, and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.